In a small, picturesque village nestled in the heart of Africa, surrounded by vast grasslands and rivers teeming with wildlife, there lived a Fulani shepherd named UMAR. The village was peaceful, where the sounds of birds singing, the wind rustling through the tall grasses, and the soft mooing of cattle filled the air. UMAR was a man of great renown and respect, known not only for his skill in tending to his cows but for his generosity and kindness. His life was simple but fulfilling, and the village loved him dearly. UMAR had a wife, Aisha, a woman of grace and intelligence. They lived a modest life, their small hut made of mud and thatch tucked near the edge of the village. Despite the challenges of their rural existence, the couple shared a bond that seemed unbreakable. They had been married for several years, and UMAR often expressed how grateful he was to have Aisha by his side. Every day, UMAR would rise with the sun and head out into the fields with his cattle. The cows were his pride and joy. He knew each one by name and could recognize them from the shape of their horns to the markings on their coats. He was often seen talking to them as though they were his closest friends, as they grazed on the vibrant, fertile land. One fateful day, as the sun began to dip behind the horizon, UMAR was out in the field when he noticed a cow, one of his most prized, was struggling. She had been acting strange all morning, and UMAR's instincts told him that something was about to happen. He quickly rushed to her side, his heart racing. It wasn't long before the cow began to labor, groaning and shifting as she prepared to give birth. UMAR knelt beside her, offering soft words of encouragement. "You've done this before, my friend," he murmured. "Just a little longer, and everything will be fine." The air was thick with tension as the cow's efforts grew more frantic. The sky turned from blue to deep purple, and the first stars began to twinkle as if watching the miraculous event unfold. With a final push, the cow gave birth. But as UMAR looked down at the calf, he felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The calf, wet and trembling, looked remarkably human. Its eyes were wide and bright, and its face bore an uncanny resemblance to UMAR himself. The villagers, who had been gathered nearby, ran to the scene at the sound of the cow's cries. "Is it a miracle?" one of the elders murmured, shaking his head in disbelief. UMAR stood there, frozen, unsure of what he was witnessing. He looked at the calf, then at the villagers, and saw their astonished expressions. This cannot be," he whispered to himself. "How is this possible?" The villagers were quick to gather, speaking in hushed tones, exchanging confused glances. "How could this happen?" one asked. "A cow giving birth to a calf that looks like a man." UMAR, still in shock, tried to explain, but his words seemed to falter. "I don't know," he said, voice trembling. "I had no part in this." But the villagers were unconvinced. Rumors began to spread like wildfire. Some thought UMAR had done something unthinkable. Others believed that the calf was a sign from the gods, or perhaps a curse for some unknown wrong. The village elders, concerned about the implications of the strange event, decided to investigate. They were respectful of UMAR, but such a bizarre occurrence could not go unexplained. The first person they turned to was Aisha, UMAR's wife, to learn if there was any truth to the rumors circulating. Aisha, sitting alone in their home, was visibly shaken when the elders arrived. She had been quiet and distant in recent days, but no one had suspected anything unusual. The elders sat down with her, their eyes full of concern. "Aisha," one elder began, "is there something you have not told us? Perhaps something between you and UMAR?" Aisha looked at him, eyes wide and full of sorrow. "UMAR and we have not been close in recent weeks. He has not been himself. For a month, we have not shared the bond that a husband and wife should. He has been distant, troubled." The elders exchanged glances, sensing the tension that lay beneath Aisha's words. But why? They pressed. What has caused this? Aisha hesitated before answering. I do not know. He was restless, full of desire, and I could not bring myself to be with him. I feared something. Something might happen if we did. And now, this, she said, gesturing toward the calf. The villagers were now even more suspicious, convinced that there was more to the story. They gathered once again, questioning UMAR about his actions. UMAR, feeling the weight of the accusations, began to unravel. In a quiet moment, sitting alone by the river, he reflected on the events that had led to that fateful day. His mind drifted back to a month before, when his desires had become overwhelming, and he had given in to temptation. I failed, UMAR whispered, his voice barely audible. I was weak, too weak to control my own desires. A man should be strong, should have control over his urges. But I failed. As the villagers confronted him, he finally broke down, tears streaming down his face. I am sorry, he said, voice shaking with regret. I have sinned, and this is the result. The gods have punished me for my weakness. I did something terrible. The villagers, filled with outrage and disappointment, decided that UMAR must be banished. You have brought shame upon us all, one of the elders said, his voice filled with sorrow. You must leave the village and never return. You cannot stay where your actions have so disrupted the balance of nature. UMAR pleaded, but the villagers remained resolute. His heart shattered as he turned to leave, casting one last glance at his wife, his cows, and the village he had once called home. As UMAR left the village, the weight of his actions bore down on him. He wandered for days, lost in thought, consumed by guilt. He thought about the lessons he had learned, the strength of self-control, and the consequences of desire. Along the way, he encountered wise elders, hermits, and travelers who shared with him stories of their own journeys toward redemption. Through these encounters, UMAR slowly began to understand the true meaning of self-control and repentance. He realized that the calf, born of a strange and miraculous event, was a symbol, a lesson. The gods had sent the calf to teach him a painful but important lesson, that desires must be controlled, that actions have consequences, and that there is always a path toward redemption. After many months of wandering and reflecting, UMAR returned to the village, humbled and ready to make amends. He sought forgiveness from Aisha, who had endured much during his absence. He then approached the village elders, his head bowed in respect. I have learned, UMAR said, his voice steady but filled with remorse. I have learned the lesson the gods have given me. I ask for your forgiveness. The elders, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, agreed to allow him to return. But the village had changed, and UMAR had changed. He no longer sought to control his desires, but rather to understand them, to use wisdom and self-discipline in all things. He became a different man, one who lived not for himself but for the greater good of his community. The story of UMAR and the miraculous calf would forever be a part of the village's history. It served as a constant reminder of the dangers of unchecked desire and the power of self-discipline. And though UMAR's journey was painful, it ultimately brought him peace and wisdom. His tale was passed down through generations, becoming a powerful and timeless African folktale. As the years passed, the villagers would often sit around the fire, telling the story of UMAR, the Fulani shepherd who had learned the hardest lesson of all, that one's desires must always be tempered with wisdom, and that the path to redemption is long but possible for those who are truly repentant. Answer: the legacy of UMAR lived on, not as a tale of shame, but as a tale of hope and transformation. The village prospered, and its people lived by the lessons learned from the miraculous birth of the calf, never forgetting the importance of self-control, responsibility, and the power of redemption.